Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister for Indigenous Affairs, Senator Scullion. Can the Minister update the Senate on how the government is working in partnership with Indigenous Australians to deliver jobs and growth in remote areas of Australia?
The Minister for Indigenous Affairs, Senator Scullion.
Thank you very much, Mr President. I'd like to thank Senator O'Sullivan and acknowledge his long-standing interest in this area, particularly in his state of Queensland. Mr President, because economic development is at the heart of this government's partnership with Indigenous Australians, Indigenous Australians must be at the forefront of development opportunities if we're going to build wealth and prosperity that we need to improve the outcome of our first Australians. And we are delivering on across a range of programs. We're investing in businesses to build local economies and communities across regional and remote Australia. Places like Arakoon and Mount Isa in the Senator's home state. We on this side understand the needs of Indigenous businesses differ between the cities and the bush. We've established a $90 million Indigenous Entrepreneurs Fund to help Indigenous businesses get a foot in the door. Under this fund there are principally two types of support, a business advisory support and grants for plant and equipment. By investing in today's Indigenous businesses and entrepreneurs, our government is fostering a generation who will build their own business knowledge, their own assets and their own wealth. Most importantly, Indigenous businesses that will employ the next generation of Indigenous workers. I'd like to also acknowledge the words of my colleague Senator Dodson, who said we need to recognise that the best way of dealing with problems is with respect, by working together and focused on commonly agreed goals. So we're working hard to get Indigenous job seekers in a position to support engagement and to support employment in remote communities. Through our community development program, we have actually supported 15,000 jobs that have actually been real jobs away from a Work for the Dole program. Over 5,000 of these have been there now for over 6 months. And can I report that the CDP program in Gallowinku have now trained job seekers in construction of their houses and they're transitioning into full-time employment.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering the question has expired. Senator O'Sullivan, supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Can I ask the Minister, how is the government partnering with Aboriginal community corporations to build economic development opportunities, generate wealth and support jobs?
Minister.
Mr President, we know that the best way to guarantee success is to work in close partnership with our first Australians to promote economic development in their own communities. So earlier this month I was lucky enough to be on Gumatj country in the Northern Territory and saw the outstanding success of the Gumatj Corporation in growing wealth and generating jobs for their people. A great occasion at Garma to be with the Prime Minister to witness the Gumatj Corporation actually sign off on their own mining agreement. Now, this is on top of a coffee shop, a nursery, a sawmill, furniture factory, cattle enterprise, a butcher shop, fishing enterprise. They're now going into mining on their own country. Now, we've made it possible by an investment of some $800,000 to establish a mine training centre, and again, on their advice, they built the entire mine training centre, which is really value-adding in the way that we all should.
Thank you, Minister. Senator O'Sullivan, final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Can I thank the Minister for his answers and note what a tremendous job he does in this ministry. Minister, what other reforms is the government pursuing to support Indigenous landowners, generate wealth and build local economies?
Minister.
We're working with Indigenous Australians across a range of measures to generate wealth and to build their local economies. And as we've acknowledged for many years, land tenure has got to be progressed to deliver long-term economic outcomes for traditional owners. What we're doing is we're making sure that the notion of land rich and dirt poor no longer applies to our first Australians. As my friend Bapaji Gallery Unipinga who said, we need to wake up land rights. We're investing for the first time in native title holders a $20 million fund to ensure that the prescribed body corporate can actually act in a way that it's not a David and Goliath arrangement. They actually have the capacity to have legal services and other services to ensure that those negotiations are fair and equal. In the Northern Territory, we're working with traditional owners to ensure that we have township leases, Mutijulu, Pilangimpi, Groote Island and the like. So all of this progress, Mr President, is making sure that traditional owners, communities and individuals are at the heart of the decisions now and into the future.